The megaship hung in the void like a continent torn from a dead world, its 19.4-kilometer silhouette blotting out the starlight as the technocrat fleet drifted into position. Admiral Zevran folded his hands behind his back, studying the Terran hull, with a smirk that never touched his eyes. 12 gravitic plates layered the surface in seamless bands. To him it looked like primitive overbuilding, mass without elegance, weight without intention. He allowed the bridge to laugh. It pleased him when they did. 2.1 billion tons, one of his strategists said, zooming the display until the Terran markings blurred. A species that solves every problem by adding more metal. Relics always think size compensates for extinction, Zevran replied. The laughter deepened, cascading through the command channels like static. Their formation tightened at a measured 300-200-kilometer radius, the safe distance recommended for dissecting old-era constructs. No weapons powered up. No defenses were considered necessary. The Terrans had vanished a century ago. Whatever this mass was, it was debris wearing a forgotten flag. A junior officer noted a 0.002 Kelvin heat deviation along the dorsal ridges. Zevran dismissed it with a gesture. Thermal ghosts, he said. Dead ships twitch. It means nothing. The megaship did not react. It only drifted, its bow angled toward no star of consequence, its hull lights dark, its slip drive signature absent. It was an artifact, and artifacts belonged to technocrat research archives. Commands flowed. Survey drones peeled away from their carriers, 50 of them, flaring blue as they accelerated toward the Terran hull. One punchline fell like a stinger across the bridge. Oversized scrap. Zevran smiled at the line and leaned closer to the holomap. The megaship's frame was unimaginative, rectilinear, armored, lacking adaptive curvature. The Terrans had always been constrained by brute force engineering. Zevran found comfort in that thought. Sophisticated species refined, desperate ones enlarged. The drones reached 1,000 meters and slowed. Their scanners washed across the megaship's hull, firing bands of spectroscopy, pulse imaging, and deep plate tomography. The results came back inconsistent. High-density alloys, unknown reinforcement signatures, power pathways arranged in geometric loops that made no functional sense. Redundant systems stacked on redundant systems. His deputy muttered. 12 hull layers. Why 12? 5 would be enough for any rational design. Terrans were never rational, Zevran said. Fear builds thick walls. Still, the anomalies bothered him. The Terran structure showed no decay. No micrometeor scarring, no reactor drift, no biological residue. It felt maintained, preserved, waiting. Another stinger dropped, sharper than the first. Who builds a continent and calls it a ship, the bridge erupted. Even Zevran allowed himself a quiet laugh as the fleet repositioned, 11,800 crew flagships forming a slow spiral around the Terran megaship. It was a show of dominance, a ritual of superiority. The technocrats considered themselves the final step of civilization: precision, efficiency, elegance. Humanity had been the opposite, chaotic, redundant, and stubborn. Zevran's eyes lingered on the Terran emblem etched into the armored flank. A faded circle, a line through it. Perhaps philosophy once meant something to them. Begin hull access planning, he ordered. We'll tow it to the foundry rings by first rotation. Whatever secrets remain, we'll dissect them. The megaship stayed silent, its systems dormant, its purpose unreadable. Zevran turned from the viewport with absolute certainty, unaware that the first error of the campaign had already been made. The Terran vessel wasn't drifting, it was watching. The first transmission arrived without fanfare, slipping through the technocrat encryption lattice as if it weren't there. A single line, perfectly translated, perfectly centered on every command screen. Terran vessel Aegis 01 acknowledges your presence. Maintain distance. Do not approach. Admiral Zevran frowned. The bridge fell silent. For a moment, no one laughed. That ship has been cold for a century, he said. Run the origin trace. The officer complied. The result appeared instantly. 0 lag, 0 drift, 0.03 second authentication response. That's impossible, she whispered. Before Zevran could reply, the second message arrived. Calm, measured. Unmistakably human. Contact request denied. Stand clear. Countdown begins. A timer appeared. 120 seconds. No threat appended. No posturing. No weapons lock. Just the clock. Zevran exhaled slowly. An automated deterrence protocol, he said, regaining his composure. Terran systems were notorious for bluffing. He gestured toward the fleet. Jam it. Respond with our terms. The comms officer initiated the override. The lattice pushed back, hard, not with force, but with precision, folding every technocrat packet back toward its origin. The bridge screens flickered as their own messages looped in perfect symmetry. We're talking to ourselves, she said. Increase output, Zevran ordered. They pushed. The Terran ship didn't. The countdown reached 98 seconds. Zevran opened a wide band channel. Terran construct, this is the Technocrat Directorate. You are ordered to submit to inspection and towing. Failure to comply. The Terran reply cut in exactly on syllable 9. Directive refused. No anger. No urgency. No variance in tone. Zevran clenched his jaw. Very well, prepare interdiction patterns. I want their slip core locked before the timer reaches. The officer at sensors rose from her chair. Admiral, the ship's heat deviation just changed. 0.002 Kelvin above baseline. Controlled rise. Intentional. That's not activation, Zevran said, though doubt edged his voice. It's posturing. They're trying to appear alive. But the bridge crew had already begun whispering. A century-old vessel should not respond with zero latency. Should not redirect encrypted packets flawlessly. Should not produce a thermal rise precise enough to register as a signature. The countdown hit 70 seconds. Zevran issued the order anyway. Pride required it. All ships advanced to 3,200-kilometer radius, dismantling formation, strike craft ready for hull breach on my mark. Engines flared across the fleet. Hundreds of vessels shifted inward, graceful arcs tightening into a controlled spiral. The megaship remained still, its hull lights dark, its vast mass drifting with deceptive passivity. Terran vessel, Zevran broadcast again. You face the Technocrat Directorate. Stand clear! The timer reached 40 seconds. The bridge lights dimmed as the Terran ship flooded local space with a passive scan, a sweep so gentle it barely registered, yet so complete it mapped. The internal temperature of every officer on every technocrat vessel. One punchline hit the air like a dropped blade. They're reading us like open memory. Zevran forced confidence into his voice. It's just an antiquated sweep! Maintain formation. But the doubt was spreading. The megaship's silence no longer felt inert. It felt deliberate. Seconds. The sea. Terran transmission pulsed again, unchanged. Maintain distance. Do not approach. 10 seconds. Zevran straightened. All ships hold. Prepare tractor locks. We take it now. The final second ticked down. Humanity didn't raise shields, didn't fire, didn't boast. They simply let the clock reach 0. And the technocrats, still believing restraint meant weakness, stepped forward into a decision they could no longer undo. The first shot came from a cruiser eager to impress its commander. A needle-thin beam that crossed the void in 0.04 seconds and struck the Terran hull without ceremony. No flare, no plume, no reaction. It simply vanished. Admiral Zevran watched. The data scroll across his display. An absorption field, he said, though he had never seen one operate with such totality. The cruiser captain, embarrassed by the silence, ordered a second shot. Then a third. Each impact produced the same impossible result. 0 scatter. 0 reflection, 0 thermal bloom. Energy not detected post-contact, the sensor officer reported. Loss recorded at 99.87%. That number hung in the air like a verdict. Zevran forced composure into his voice. Full spectrum test. All ships. Controlled bursts. The bridge trembled as hundreds of vessels opened fire. Gamma lances. Thermal. Sweeps. Kinetic boosted photonic cutters. A wash of ultraviolet scatter. A synchronized pulse of grav stress waves. The void brightened as the technocrat fleet unleashed a carefully measured storm, timed with precision. calibrated to disarm any relic that dared to pretend it still lived. The Terran megaship did nothing. Every strike vanished into its 12 gravitic plates, absorbed with the same quiet, predatory efficiency. Heat signatures didn't rise, stress levels didn't shift. The hull's 0.002 Kelvin deviation remained constant, as if each attack were less meaningful than dust hitting a mountain. Stinger fell across the bridge. We aren't even warming it. Zevran's jaw tightened. Increase output, pattern delta. I want everything except antimatter. The fleet obeyed. This time space rippled. A coordinated barrage from 218 ships converged on a single point, a force that could peel open a dreadnought in under a minute. The blast lit the void in spirals of blue-white plasma. When the glow faded, the Terran hull sat unchanged. Absorption efficiency unchanged, the sensor officer whispered. 99.87%. Exactly. The precision unnerved her more than the feat itself. Technocrats prized control, calculated outcomes, predictable systems. But this was perfection beyond their architecture. Absorption that never fluctuated, materials that never stressed, a design philosophy that had no place in their doctrines of elegance and minimalism. One engineer murmured, "To absorb that much power, the internal conduits would require a 7.2 teracore array," another finished. But no single species ever stabilized one. Zevran cut them off. Their science died with them. We're not losing tempo to ghosts. Yet the fear was spreading. Officers double-checked their readouts, reran diagnostics, recalibrated sensors that suddenly felt insufficient. A few wondered aloud if this was truly a relic or a warning. The megaship still had not moved. A new burst of readings scrolled. Across the main display, not from technocrat scanners, from the Terran vessel. "It's mapping us," the comms officer said. "Every ship, every heat line, every reactor loop." "How detailed?" Zevran asked. She swallowed. "Down to individual." Crew heartbeats. Another punchline struck, cold and sharp. "It knows us better than we know it," Zevran straightened, clinging to authority. "Prepare the interdiction grid. We disable it now." But the fleet had no confidence left, not after firing thousands of terajoules into a target that absorbed everything as calmly as stone absorbs sunlight. Not after seeing engineering mastery so precise it felt intentional, patient, aware. The Terran vessel remained silent. The technocrats, rattled and unsteady, began to understand a truth they could not yet admit. They had fired the first real shot of the engagement. And nothing on that colossal hull had considered it worth answering. The Terran megaship moved first. Not slowly, not predictably, not with engines flaring to announce intention. It shifted. In 0.03 seconds, the entire 19.4 kilon, 2.1 billion-ton structure vanished from the center of the technocrat spiral and reappeared 3,200 kilometers above its previous position. No wake, no distortion, no slipstream turbulence. Sensors caught only a single signature. Slip burst. Complete Admiral Zevran froze. His fleet had been arranged in a precision spiral meant to constrict the relic. Now the center was empty, and the Terran vessel hovered above them like a continent. "Judging a storm, that's impossible," a navigator whispered. "A mass that size can't relocate without reaction forces." "It didn't relocate," the sensor officer said. "It re-indexed. Perfect coordinate realignment. No inertia drift." Before anyone could process it, the second Terran vessel appeared. Then the third. In under 0.03 seconds, 7 additional megaships slip-burst into existence around the technocrat fleet, forming a slow, silent ring. Each one dwarfed the flagship. Each one carried the same 12-layer gravitic plating, the same impossible thermal steadiness, the same cold patience. A stinger cut the air like a falling blade. They weren't alone. Zevran forced his voice to steady. "Reform the grid. Pull back to escape vectors, now!" But the vectors were gone. Every FTL corridor within a 3,200-kilometer radius had collapsed into hard locks. The Terran ships had sealed the lanes without firing a shot. No distortion fields, no interference pulses. Just perfect, instantaneous command of space. The FTL helms reported the same error across all channels, extraction path unavailable Zevrans. Deputy leaned closer to the console, disbelief draining the color from his face. They sealed every corridor simultaneously. That's not suppression, that's redesign. Outside the viewport, the Terran line shifted again. Not to threaten, not to attack, to optimize positions. Each ship adjusted by meters, maybe less, aligning along vectors the technocrats didn't understand. It was choreography at the scale of mountains. The technocrat fleet panicked. Dozens of ships drifted out of formation, trying to compensate for the sudden loss of escape velocity. Collision alarms blared. Stabilizers struggled to keep the spiral intact. Their data streams stuttered under the weight of Terran mapping sweeps that examined every hull, reactor, and weapon port in real time. They know our thrust tolerances, the engineering chief said. They're predicting our drift before it happens. They're writing the battlefield, someone murmured. The Terran ships remained still, as though letting the enemy collapse under its own disarray. It was restraint, the kind that felt deliberate. Humans offering a chance to step back, reassess, understand the situation for what it truly was. But pride killed clarity. Zevran slammed a command through the lattice. Break the ring, full burn, punch through one of them. The fleet obeyed, engines flaring as 218 ships surged toward the nearest Terran megaship. The human vessel did not move. It simply shifted its slip indices again, another 0.03 second displacement, appearing a few kilometers to the left, allowing the technocrat assault line to shoot straight through the empty space where it had been. The fleet scattered, a punchline hit like a hammer. They're letting us miss. Zevran felt the moment the battle turned, not through fire, but through inevitability. The Terran formation tightened, locking space with gentle, unbreakable geometry. The technocrat fleet had no weapons that mattered, no lanes that remained, no formation that held. And still, the humans hadn't fired a single shot. The Terran ships waited, silent and disciplined, as though giving the technocrats one last moment to understand the truth shaping around them. The battlefield was no longer theirs. It belonged to the species that could move continents in 0.03 seconds and think nothing extraordinary of it. The Terran formation shifted as if inhaling, the silent geometry of giants aligning with mathematical inevitability. No weapons charged, no threats were issued. Yet every technocrat officer felt the battlefield tighten around them, space itself drawing into deliberate shape. The first pulse rolled out from Aegis 01, an invisible envelope that touched 412 ships at once. The effect was immediate. Reactor loops flickered. Grav wells hiccuped. Stabilizers lost their rhythm, not from overload but from redefinition. Terran systems didn't attack, they rewrote. Multiple drive anomalies, a technocrat officer shouted. Field drift is quantized. We can't compensate. On Zevran's console, error codes cascaded faster than he could read. Slip drives locked, fusion chambers reduced output to 0.02%. Even backup reactors stalled in perfect synchrony. Systems his fleet considered elegant and superior. Folded under engineering they had mocked, a stinger dropped into the tension. Were being taken apart gently. The Terran megaships moved again, centimeter adjustments, nothing more. Yet each adjustment sent precision ripples through their field architecture. Local space-time flexed by microns, enough to interrupt. Technocrat gravwells. Engines sputtered, then stalled. Weapon capacitors bled charge into harmless static. A wide band scan swept through. It felt like an exhale across the hulls. Soft, comprehensive, absolute. They're reading our entire fleet topology, the sensor chief whispered. Every reactor coil, every safety override, every stress point. Then the disabling began. Not explosively, not violently, with surgical calm. At ship Nyacha 77, the Terran field-induced counterphase alignment inside the drive core. The engine shut down as if politely asked. At ship Daga 204, inertial damping snapped into safe mode, freezing the vessel in a drift that posed no threat to its crew. At ship Damaga 361, the main grav lens collapsed into a zero-risk standby, leaving the ship powerless but unharmed. One by one, in controlled intervals of 0.8 seconds, entire warships surrendered their functions without a single Terran shot fired. Zevran's. Deputy stared in disbelief. They've mapped us, every weakness, every redundancy. And they're using it with restraint, another added. No breaches, no casualties. Zevran gripped the rail so tightly his knuckles whitened. This is a coercion by humiliation. But even he sensed the deeper truth. This wasn't cruelty. It was control. Calm, calculated, unshakable control. Aegis 01 emitted a second pulse, softer than the first. Hull vibrations across technocrat vessels dropped to 0. Internal gravity stabilized at 1.0 G across all disabled ships, regardless of their design. Specs. Artificial atmospheres corrected themselves. Reactor safeties re-engaged. Terran engineering didn't just dismantle the enemy, it protected them. A punchline hung in the air. They're disabling us like we're fragile. Technocrat. Captains tried to fire countermeasures, but their systems refused. The Terran systems had rewritten the battlefield to neutralize aggression before it formed. Defensive turrets locked in place, missile bays sealed, sensor arrays cycled down to passive only. Across the fleet, fear shifted into something worse, understanding. The Psi. Humans weren't overpowering them. They were out-engineering reality around them. Zevran's final attempt at leadership came as a whisper. What do they want? The Terran answer arrived through the comm lattice, soft as a breath. Stand down, no further systems will be disabled. No threat, no boast. Just inevitability delivered with perfect restraint. And with 412 ships neutralized, the technocrats realized the battle was no longer about strength. It was about understanding a species that could reshape space with the same calm certainty they used to solve equations. The humans had given them mercy once. The next moment would decide if they deserved another. The Terran transmission unfolded. Across every technocrat channel, without force, without distortion, without a single encrypted challenge. It simply overlaid their lattice as though it had always belonged there. A calm human voice, genderless, unhurried, undeniable. Terran directive, engagement concluded, casualties 0, prisoners protected, purpose, prevention not war. The words hit harder than any weapon. Silence rippled through technocrat bridges as officers realized the statement wasn't bravado. Their readouts confirmed it. Across 412 disabled ships, life support held steady at 1.0 G. Reactor safeties remained engaged, atmospheres stable, temperatures balanced within 0.02 K of baseline. Even ships drifting uncontrolled had been gently nudged into safe vectors by Terran microgravity correction sweeps. Zevran listened with tightening fists as the message continued. Humanity does not seek conquest. We end conflict by removing the tools that create it. A stinger cut through the stillness. Your crews are not our enemies. The words spread, echoed, magnified, reaching every civilian node across technocrat space. On outlying worlds, citizens watched in disbelief as their war fleet, pride of the Directorate, hung helpless in a silent ring. Reports cascaded across public channels. Reactor loops shut down without harm, gravwells locked in safe mode, weapons inert, crews unharmed. In the capital, protests ignited within minutes. Explain this restraint, in one voice demanded on a live feed. Explain why they protect our soldiers better than you do, Zevran's deputy whispered. They're using mercy as strategy. No, Zevran said, they're weaponizing it. But the distinction didn't matter. The Terrans weren't speaking to him anymore. The broadcast continued, layered with clean telemetry and quantified evidence, proof that no technocrat life had been endangered despite the scale of the engagement. Your ships were disabled, using controlled field manipulation. No structural compromise, no reactor stress, no fatalities. Charts appeared, engine schematics, grav lens diagrams, reactor cooling profiles, each annotated with Terran corrections that prevented cascading failures. Engineers stared at the data in disbelief. Terran hands had protected them mid-battle, adjusting fault lines with subatomic precision. They fixed our ships while neutralizing them, a technician murmured. That's not warfare, that's guardianship. Another punchline landed with surgical timing. We prepare for threats greater than you, the phrase echoed across the directorate. Citizens replayed it. Analysts dissected it. Protest walls filled with fury. If humanity wasn't the threat, then what was? Zevran tried to counter-broadcast, but the lattice rejected every packet. The Terrans hadn't blocked him. They had simply restored the network to its original protocols, clearing technocrat overrides from decades past. Transparency reasserted itself, and the Directorate could no longer hide behind curated data. Internal revolt accelerated. Governors demanded inquiries. Civil councils initiated emergency sessions. Military officers, embarrassed, unharmed, humiliated, by precision mercy, refused to fire again without understanding what they faced. Zevran slammed his fist against the console. They're dismantling the Directorate's authority by being better caretakers than we are. The Terran voice returned one final time, soft and clear. Stand down. Restore your systems. Consider why we intervened. No ultimatum. No demand. For surrender. Just a mirror held to a civilization that prided itself on intellect, yet failed to grasp the quiet intelligence of restraint. The technocrat fleet drifted, powerless, protected, exposed before its own citizens. And as the revolt spread from ship decks to city floors, Zevran felt momentum slipping toward a battle he was no longer fighting. Humanity had rewritten the rules, and the Directorate had just discovered it wasn't prepared for a war that didn't look like war at all. The leaks began without warning, threading through the technocrat datanet like strands of light slipping beneath a sealed door. No system registered intrusion. No alarms rose. Files simply appeared, authenticated, time-stamped, verified through protocols older than the Directorate itself. The first document carried a Terran insignia and a quiet line of text. Archive release, 200 system dissemination authorized, Admiral Ace. Zevran watched as the packet unfolded into a stream of records. Sensor logs, intercepted transmissions, political forecasts, military simulations. Decades of them. Humanity had been watching the technocrats long before either side acknowledged the other's existence. A technician whispered, "These logs track our fleet evolution for 27 years. Another added, "They projected our reactor upgrades before we even built them." The bridge fell into stunned silence as more archives spilled through the lattice. Terran observers had charted everything: technocrat migration patterns, slip route expansions, energy production, even internal civil disputes. A map appeared showing 200 systems shaded in soft Terran blue, each one marked monitoring complete. AI, Stinger landed across every bridge. They knew us before we knew them. Zevran searched for comfort in denial. These must be fabrications, psychological warfare. But the data was perfect. Down to drift rates, heat signatures, and reactor calibrations. Terran projections aligned with technocrat outcomes across 3 decades with 99% accuracy. Only a civilization of obsessive precision could maintain a model that detailed. More files opened. Technical notes, countersigned by human engineers. Schematics of technocrat slip drives, annotated with corrective marks. Stress tolerances, failure points, solutions the Directorate had missed. They built countermeasures tailored to our systems, the engineering chief said, voice dry. Every weakness addressed, every exploit optimized, but always non-lethal. Civilian channels erupted as the archives reached public networks. Citizens watched Terran reports of their own leaders' decisions, classified blunders, avoided catastrophes, and suppressed rebellions. Humanity hadn't interfered. They had simply watched, prepared, and waited. Protests ignited across the Directorate's core worlds. Outlying colonies declared neutrality. Data analysts framed Terran readiness as the mark of a civilization that expected crisis, not conquest. On screen, a video file opened automatically. It showed a Terran megaship drifting at the edge of technocrat space 31 years ago, its slip signature masked, hull lights dimmed. The recording accelerated through time, Terran ships appearing every few years, then vanishing again. Always at sea. The periphery. Always observing. They've been auditing our entire civilization, Zevran muttered. Another file followed, this one colder. A chronological list of intervention thresholds, each paired with a projected technocrat action. The Directorate had crossed the final threshold 5 days ago. A punchline fell like a slow, heavy verdict. They didn't ambush us. They prepared for us. Across the fleet, guilt mingled with fear. Officers realized humanity had not responded in anger. They had responded according to models built over decades. Quiet models, patient models, models that framed the Terrans not as conquerors, but as guardians confronted with a predictable crisis. A final archive file expanded across every screen, an analysis of technocrat expansion patterns ending with a simple sentence. Projected collapse without intervention, high. The message offered no triumph, only understanding. Zevran closed his eyes, feeling the weight of inevitability settle around him. The humans had not humiliated them with power, they had humbled them with preparation. The next move belonged to the Directorate, and every technocrat knew the Terrans already had the probable outcomes mapped. The hour began without a sound. Aegis 01 rotated its 12 gravitic plates into perfect alignment, each layer shifting by microns until the resonance pattern matched the geometry of the trapped technocrat armada. No light, no aura, no warning. Only a silent coordination across Terran megaships, their positions fixed with continental steadiness. Then the field expanded. It rolled outward at subatomic depth, soft, controlled, exact, touching the technocrat. Grid with the delicacy of a pulse checking a heartbeat. 6,300 ships lit up on Terran holomaps, each tagged with reactor output, gravwell frequency, and structural tolerances measured to 12 decimals. Resonance sync achieved. A human voice murmured over an open lattice. Begin correction sweep. The correction began. At ship March 11, gravwells slipped into harmonic neutral, drives freezing in safe mode. At ship Not 208, reactor coils eased into 0.22% output, holding precisely at stability. At ship NUR 3177, slip drives folded inward, not damaged, simply convinced to sleep. Every correction was gentle, every action reversible. Nothing broke, nothing burned. A stinger cut through the technocrat channels. They're shutting us down like engines on a workbench. Zevran's flagship shuddered as the resonance passed through it. Not violently, almost kindly. His displays flickered from red to blue as systems obeyed a logic they didn't recognize. Heat. Drift? He demanded. None, the sensor chief said. Still 0.002 Kelvin deviation, exactly. He swallowed. Meaning the field isn't stressing our hulls at all. Outside, Terran megaships held formation, their mass dwarfing the technocrat vessels, yet never imposing raw force. Instead, they manipulated the architecture of space itself, subtle bends and compressions guiding each disablement. The battle wasn't a clash. It was an engineer's demonstration. A synchronized hum rippled through the void as the Terran plates at last reached full resonance. The pattern locked. For a moment, every technocrat ship felt weightless. No drift, no inertia, no forward momentum, just equilibrium. Then the final sweep began. 6,300 ships dimmed in waves of stillness, their reactors folding into perfect standby, their gravwells pausing mid-cycle, their weapons inert, their drives dormant. Not a single hull overheated, not a single crew member experienced more than I. A chair vibration, a punchline echoed in the silence. They ended a war without making heat. Zevran stared at the holomap, watching light after light fall to blue. This isn't disablement, he whispered. It's redesign of an entire battle space. His deputy nodded. No casualties reported, all life support nominal, all atmospheres stable. Across civilian networks, the collapse broadcast in real time. Citizens who once trusted technocrat superiority now watched their armada become still figures in a Terran-made constellation. Engineers marveled at resonance signatures that should have been impossible. Protesters demanded to know why their leaders provoked a species capable of such surgical dominance without harm. Terran ships adjusted their positions by a few meters, final alignment. Then the human voice returned, steady and calm as ever. Correction. Complete. All vessels stable. No further action required. The words weren't victory, they were a report. Technocrat crews looked at their consoles, no failure alarms, no breaches, no losses. Just systems resting, preserved, protected from even themselves. The hour ended the same way it began, without sound. And in the stillness, the technocrats finally understood the most terrifying truth of the encounter. Humanity never fought them. Humanity fixed them. The announcement reached every disabled ship at once, carried on a Terran lattice that folded seamlessly through the Directorate's fractured network. No distortion, no force, just a calm voice, clear and measured. Medical stabilization complete, all crews accounted for. No fatalities. Across the technocrat fleet, lights rose inside medbays as systems resumed controlled activity. Sleeper protocols disengaged gently. Injured officers, those harmed only by their own collapsing decks and not a single Terran action, found themselves stabilized, vitals supported by soft pulses of borrowed Terran field assistance. Admiral Zevran watched the status report scroll across his display. 11,800 personnel aboard his flagship, each reading within safe parameters. Even life support redundancies, normally delicate, had been reinforced with microscopic Terran adjustments that eased thermal strain without altering design. A quiet stinger fell across the bridge. They healed the damage we caused ourselves. Then, the second transmission arrived. The Directorate is responsible for initiating escalation. Terran intervention follows civil law. Trials will be convened. Commanders will be heard. Zevran stiffened. They presume to judge us? No, his deputy said, voice thrumming with disbelief. They're offering judicial process. Actual. Procedure. Better than what we give our own dissidents. The message continued, accompanied by transparent evidence logs, time-coded, cross-referenced, irrefutable. It displayed the initial technocrat orders, the unauthorized volleys, the forced interdiction grid, the decision to fire on a non-aggressive vessel. Every entry came from the Directorate's own records, decrypted and returned without alteration. Civilian. Networks exploded. Outrage swept through 200 systems already destabilized by the archive leaks. Protest streams filled the Directorate's data sphere. They provoked humans. They lied about the threat. They risked billions for pride. Governors declared neutrality. Colonial councils demanded leadership reforms. A few military factions openly refused further obedience. The Terran voice cut through the chaos with surgical timing. Correction begins with truth. Conquest serves no purpose. Zevran felt the bridge shift, his officers no longer looking. To him, but to the calm geometry of Terran megaships hanging outside their viewport, motionless, patient, unthreatening. The old myth of Terran brutality collapsed under the weight of something far more destabilizing. Terran fairness. A new beam of data unfolded. Legal frameworks, civic stabilization models, and reconstruction assistance packages designed to prevent collapse without imposing foreign rule. You will govern yourselves, the message said. You will reform yourselves. We will not replace your institutions, a punchline followed, soft but absolute. Correction is not domination. Zevran's deputy whispered. They're giving us a future. Under their oversight, Zevran countered. Under their patience, she replied. Outside, Aegis 01 shifted its gravitic plates by millimeters, an adjustment so small it barely registered. Yet its meaning was unmistakable. Permission for technocrat ships to begin restarting their systems. Engineers tentatively reactivated reactors. Gravwells returned to nominal output. Drives hummed back online. All of it mirrored by Terran safeties that intervened instantly if a spike exceeded safe tolerance. The Terrans weren't controlling them. They were keeping them alive long enough to correct their own course. As his flagship's core stabilized, Zevran understood why the Directorate feared humanity. Their strength wasn't force. It was moral architecture built into engineering. A civilization that designed ships not to dominate enemies, but to protect even those who attacked them. Outside the viewport, Terran megaships formed a loose avenue, creating open space for technocrat vessels to drift freely. A final message arrived. Choose your path. Reform is yours. We will not follow you into it. No threat, no demand. Just a future placed gently into unsteady hands. Zevran's fleet, humbled and newly awakening, drifted forward, heading into political realignment they could no longer delay, guided by a civilization that conquered nothing yet corrected everything. The first alert came from the Terran deep sensor array, a low chime that barely rose above background ambient. Yet every human officer on Aegis 01 reacted instantly. A soft blue marker appeared on their displays, far beyond the boundaries of the engagement, past even the outer debris fields. Range, 4.7 light hours. Classification, anomalous mass shift. Designation, Construct Class O, probable World Eater. The bridge dimmed as secondary confirmations swept in. Not a ship, not a fleet. A silhouette the size of a minor moon, dormant for centuries, now shifting by 0.03 degrees. No heat bloom. No emissions. Just movement, intentional, slow, unmistakable. Humanity had seen this pattern only once in their archives. A stinger cut through the Terran command net. O signature confirmed. Across the battlefield, technocrat ships struggled to restart systems, unaware of the deeper threat waking in the dark. Their attention remained on Terran vessels forming rigid but unthreatening corridors. None saw the quiet way every Terran gravitic plate realigned at once. Admiral Zevran noticed. "What are they doing?" he asked. His deputy watched the Terran, a formation titan with perfect continental precision. "They're preparing for something that isn't us." Out in the dark, the construct shifted again. 2.1 billion tons of ancient alloy grinding against the void. Old world architecture. Pre-civilizational. A predator built not for domination, but consumption. Its slip-burst signature flickered, primitive but potent. Aegis 01 transmitted the first warning, carried without distortion across every technocrat node. Outer rim anomaly detected. Classification: existential. Maintain distance. Do not follow. Zevran stared at the data feed. A threat to whom? The answer came with Terran precision. To all. Terran megaships repositioned, spacing themselves with surgical geometry, forming a tri-axis barrier pointing toward the anomaly. Their 19.4 kilometer frames braced in silence as plate resonance shifted into long-range defense calibration. Data poured through the lattice. Construct schematics, historic failed encounters, pre-collapse warnings from civilizations erased before the technocrats existed. Humanity had prepared for the technocrats, but they had built themselves for this. More. Them data streamed onto screens. Slip-wake turbulence patterns, gravitational hollows deeper than black hole tidal influence, consumption arcs spanning 4.7 light hours. Everything pointed to one conclusion: the construct wasn't awakening by chance. Something had signaled it. On the technocrat flagship, nerves tightened. "Are we in danger?" an officer whispered. A Terran overlay answered before Zevran could. If unaddressed, yes. Human engineers on Aegis 01 moved through their stations with disciplined brevity, comms checks, harmonic indexing, slip core stabilization. Every action quiet, every motion inevitable. They didn't shout, they didn't panic, they knew the patterns. They had studied this threat long before confronting any technocrat fleet. A soft punchline flowed across every shared channel. Correction was never our end goal. Zevran felt the weight behind the words. The Terrans had intervened not to conquer his people, but to ensure they didn't collapse in the face of something far larger. The Directorate's arrogance hadn't threatened humanity. It had risked waking a cosmic predator. The construct's mass shuddered again. A faint slip-burst signature rippled through local space, distorting readings across all ships for a full 0.03 seconds. Terran ships reacted instantly. Gravitic plates locked. Formation sealed. Resonance spiked into defensive harmonics. The sky behind them darkened as their drives rerouted energy, holding power at 7.2 teracore thresholds. Humanity stood as the front line, not the victors of a petty conflict. Zevran watched Terran megaships form an immense wall, shielding even the technocrats behind them. "They're protecting us," he said, voice barely audible. His deputy nodded slowly. Not because we deserve it, because the galaxy needs it. The Terran voice returned for the final time, calm, disciplined, unshakable. World Eater activity. Accelerating. Prepare your systems. Stand behind us. Do not engage. No command, no fear. Just the quiet certainty of a civilization that had engineered itself to face nightmares older than empires. The construct shifted toward the light. And humanity, steady as stone, moved to meet it.